This video, and everything angelspit does, is made possible by the amazing people on Patreon. Join angelspit's Patreon and receive a giant robot, and a spaceship, and eternal life. This is part 1 of a 2-part video about the vocoder. In part 1, we'll look at the history, the different types of vocoder, and how they work. We're also going to build a really simple vocoder sound. The vocoder was a wartime invention, designed by the King of France, Jean-Michel Jarre, in the vocoder pop war of 1642. He was waging war against the 4 German princes, Ralph, Florian, KARL, and the other guy. The French bombarded Germany with smooth, soothing, vocoded synth sounds, while the Germans used their vocoders to spread propaganda such as, "It's more fun to compute." And they were right. And that is actually what happened. Whatever Google says, it's wrong. The vocoder takes an audio signal such as your voice or drums. This is called a modulator because it will modulate or shape the sound. It then passes the modulator signal, your voice, through a number of bands, typically 12 to 16. These slice the signal into different frequency band. Each one is basically a very narrow bandpass filter. This section looks at the volume of the signal across each frequency bandwidth, from all the way down to the low ones, all the way up to the high ones. So the lights on the vocoder show the frequencies in my voice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Each band then feeds its signal into its own envelope follower. Now, an envelope follower looks at the volume contour or envelope and it traces its shape, or it follows its shape, hence the term envelope follower. Each envelope follower will output this shape as a continuous voltage. And the cool thing about this voltage is you can control anything with it. FYI, this entire section is called the analyzer section because it's analyzing your voice. The voltage created from each of these bands then passes it into the synthesis section. This section takes the sound you want to shape, typically a big fat synth, and this sound is called the carrier because it's carrying the wave that will be modulated or changed. The carrier signal is also sliced into the same number of frequency bands. But this time, each of the bands on the carrier, or the synthesizer, are having their volumes adjusted by the corresponding band from the modulator. When all of the frequency bands are doing this simultaneously, you sound like a Cylon. If all the terms are confusing, just remember, modulator is the mouth. It's the bit that speaks. The modular vocoder uses patch cables to connect the different modulator bands to the different carrier bands. The advantage with this is that instead of having all the frequency bands hardwired, as in band 5 always goes to band 5, band 6 always goes to band 6, you can patch a modulator frequency into any carrier frequency you want. So band 5 could go to band 12, band 6 could go to band 2. Resulting in some very interesting effects, and we're going to be experimenting with this in part 2. Examples of modular vocoders include the Moog vocoder and the Doepfer A129 vocoder. And I'll say at this point that the Moog vocoder is terrifyingly expensive, but it's worth every cent. It's amazing. So is the Doepfer A129. Modular vocoders are awesome. Analog all-in-one box vocoders are great because you get to control the volume and the slew or smoothness of each band. The best example of this is the Roland SVC350. Digital vocoders use computerized wizard magic. Many of these have a unique sound and are very interesting. Examples include the Korg VP1 and the Warp Factory vocoder. If you don't have the cash for a hardware vocoder, there are many software vocoders, and some of these are free, and actually they're totally usable. Awesome! Now let's make a basic vocoder sound. For these examples, I will be using the Doepfer A129. It's a 15-band vocoder with 13 band passes, a high pass, and a low pass. It also has a high pass output for the raw modulator or voice signal. This can be used to add into the vocoder sound, so your raw voice adds definition to it. For this example, we'll be using a voice as the modulator and a big fat synth as the carrier. The basic rule with a vocoder is sonically rich signal in, sonically rich signal out. We'll record the voice with a good microphone, we will slightly EQ the vocals, then compress them at 2:1 at -9 dB. I'll also run a de-esser over this to reduce sibilance, as sibilance can really cut your head off in a vocoder. We're not going to use a multiband compression on the voice, as we want lots of variance across the different frequencies in the voice. So all the frequency bands are jumping up and down. A multiband compressor tends to bring all the different frequencies up to a similar level, which will reduce the overall vocoder effect. It doesn't sound as clear. Now I'm also going to slightly distort the vocal going into the vocoder, as analog distortion sounds great on this vocoder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Next, the carrier wave. In this case, it's a big fat synth. I'll be using a bright, buzzy synth sound, as the more high frequencies, the more the vocoder can bite into the sound, giving the result of something with a higher, better definition. I'm also going to be adding a slight dusting of noise, and this noise is a bit richer in the top end. And this will also give the vocoder something a little extra to bite into in the highs. Once again, I will slightly distort the synthesizer sound going into the vocoder, as it will also add more warmth.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
If possible, EQ the synth carrier signal before it goes into the vocoder. For some reason, 200 to 500 Hertz is sometimes hot and can get distorted and can sound muddy. So I'm going to run the synth through an EQ.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Also, I'm going to apply EQ to the vocoder's output to give it more shape. Some vocoders have built-in volume control for each band, and these can really help shape the sound. I'm going to be running some of the bands through passive volume controllers to contour the sound, because the modular vocoder doesn't have volume control over each band.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Put it all together and we have a fat vocoder. Next, part 2 of the vocoder. We're going to scratch the surface for how crazy you can get on the sounds. And we're going to try and evoke an ancient, forgotten demon from the deep.